the lead up to Rio 2016, I was in the best shape of my life. I was the fittest I've ever been, the strongest I've ever been. But actually, the mental side of me was probably the lowest of lows. And I think I would go back and speak out a bit more, use that support system, use the psychologist a bit more, and to put my hand up and say, yeah, I need that extra help, because at the time I don't think I really put my hand up and asked for help. I would say performing at the best in the most professional way, I would say, but also performing to the best of your own abilities. I think it's so hard these days. You want to compare yourself to other people, but actually don't. Work yourself, work really hard doing the things that you want to do in the best of your abilities. Half and half. I think what really helped being as a kid, a youngster, I think in one sense in Beijing in 2008 when I was 13, I was young, but I didn't really think about things as well. I think I was 13 going on 30 in a sense, because I was the youngest in the team by a massive margin. I think the next oldest was 17, 18. I would attach myself to the older athletes and the older teams, and they just took me under their wing. But also because I was so young, I didn't really take on the world. I didn't really think of the pressure, think of the outside world. I was just doing the sport that I love to do, like I did every single day, and I didn't really take the outside world in. It's so funny because I think a lot of the team always used to say to me, especially the coaches and all that, they called me the matron when I was the older one in the team, because I just made sure everyone was in their place, supporting everyone, looking after everyone. So I think, yeah, it did change. I think as a 13-year-old, as a kid, I was just so excited to be there, not thinking about the outside world, just buzzing. Whereas actually, as the older I got, the more experience I got. Well, I think that happens in every walk of life, doesn't it? When you're new to something, you're quite naive, you're not really thinking about things, you're just so excited to be there. Where as you're older, you've gained that whole years of experience that I just made sure that everyone was okay on the team. But I think that's my personality. I like to make sure everyone's okay. Even when I see it on a train or walking in the street and I see an older person on their own, or someone sitting on their own, I always worry about them. I'm like, I hope they're okay, But I think, again, that's my personality. So I felt like, in a sense, being the older one on the team, I felt a sense of responsibility, making sure that everyone else on the team, all the new athletes coming through, that they were comfortable, they were happy in a way. Because I think when I was a youngster, I had that in the likes of my teammates. We were so lucky, both in Beijing and London, that our team was incredible. We had an incredible camaraderie, and it was like family. We were all so close. And I think because of London and the pressure that had on Paralympians and Olympians, and for us it was the games of all games, and we had to be tight-knit because we were away a lot of the time. And I think we were so close in that sense that it just brought us all together. It's so hard to know what I did that worked. I think in a weird way, I love pressure. It drives me. But it's so funny, actually, as a kid, and especially going into London 2012, there's a huge amount of pressure on our shoulders. Whereas now, the pressure gets to me a lot more. So sometimes I wish I look back at myself as 13-year-old, as a 17-year-old going into London. I think, what did I actually do? How did I cope with that pressure? Because I wish I knew. That, so I could give it to not just other people, but myself. I don't know, I don't think my disability of chondroplasia has defined me in a weird way. I think it's just, I'm 27 now, it's all I know. I don't know what it's like being taller. I don't know what it's like being able to reach things or without this disability. So I think in a weird way, no, it hasn't. But I think in a sense as well, it's my personality, and I think it's the support around you. I think, looking back now, just jogging my memory, how I coped with London 2012 was having that support team around me. My coach, Billy Pye, who's been my rock for years and years. the performance director at the time, John Atkinson, the physio, the team that we had in Swansea. And also I think what really helped as well was, as a 13-year-old and a 17-year-old, I was going to school still. In a weird way, both Rio and Tokyo, I was an adult and I didn't have those distractions. Whereas I would go swimming in the morning and I would have a whole day at school where you have those hours in the day and you're not thinking about swimming because you're just thinking about being a normal person, a normal student. And looking back now, I think it's clicked actually. Probably that has really helped me. Yes, I was tired. I remember in my English classes nodding off in the afternoon because we were training in the morning, training in the afternoon. But actually that school balance and having a life outside of the pool really, really helped me distract and be around people that didn't know what swimming or didn't know what sport was. Like, I had the most amazing friends, that friendship group from year 7 to year 11 in a Welsh school in Oxford. It was just fabulous. Like, it was amazing. And I think having that student life really, really helped. So maybe that's what helped both in those 2 games. I think, again, it's probably... Oh, that's a hard question because... I think I'm very lucky that because being on the team from such a young age and being able to travel, and I'm quite independent and I think I'm quite adaptable. So adapting to all these new environments, I see it as a thing to learn. Yes, I love my comfort zone. It's something I think all humans do. You love your home environment. You love being around people that you're happy, you're comfortable with, but also being out of that comfort zone is also quite a thrilling thing, and I quite like that. I love learning new things. I love sometimes putting myself in uncomfortable positions. Yes, it's not a nice feeling when you feel a bit nervous, you feel a bit sick, but actually the feeling afterwards when it goes well, it's that natural high. And I think that's what I miss in a sense about swimming and missing in sport, is that yes, you're so nervous going into something that you're not in control of, the races, all that type of thing, but actually that feeling afterwards, it's that drug, isn't it? It's that thrilling feeling that you want to do it again and again. You want to put yourself in uncomfortable positions, and yeah, it's not nice feelings, but it's a thing that you just want to, you're addicted to. Trying to be as prepared as you can in what you do and be in control of your controllables. I think that's what I learned about myself. And I think growing up in the sport and growing up in my own self is that sometimes, yes, you can control things, but also you can't control things. But being in control of the things that you can control is a massive advantage. So working on yourself, working on the things that are going well, things that you can control is a massive thing. I think for me was back in Rio, the lead up to Rio 2016. I was, again, not in the right mental state. Your mind can play a massive part in your ability to do something.
What a change then? Could you expand on what your struggles were at that point?
Yeah, I think my self-belief was massively impacted. I didn't have any self-belief at all. And it's so strange because I was doing more swim sessions, I was doing more gym, I was doing 3 gym sessions a week. I was, again, the most strongest that I've ever been. My swim sessions were going incredible, but actually my self-belief in myself was just at the lowest that it's ever been. And I don't know why, and I wish that I had a reason why, but I think it made me realise that actually how important it is to have that balanced life and not just be all about swimming. And I think at that time it was just, I was so swimming focused, and actually I realised that looking back, I think I needed to have a balance, and it wasn't just all about swimming, but I needed to have focus on myself away from the sport too, because I think I was just, again, in time in Manchester leading into Rio 2016, my friends were all swimmers. I was in a swimming environment. I lived with swimmers. It was all swim, where actually I didn't really have a break away from it. Like, I hardly saw my family because I was so focused on my sport. And in the sense, sometimes it's actually, you've got to give yourself a break. Yeah, I was just so focused on the sport where actually I needed to think of myself as a person too. To be honest, I don't really think about it, but also I do think about it because I wouldn't have had the opportunities that I had if I wasn't Ellie Simmonds with achondroplasia, dwarfism. I wouldn't have been able to go to the Paralympics. I wouldn't have been able to meet so many incredible people with different disability and part of that Paralympic movement. So in a sense, it's a good thing because it's given me an incredible opportunity and also a responsibility now. I think, like, when I was a kid looking up, I had role models, the likes of Naira Lewis, Paralympian swimmer, incredible athlete, and I saw people in like the limelight with different disabilities, and I was like, wow, they can do it, I can. So I feel like now I've got that responsibility because I'm, yes, small, I'm a dwarf, that now hopefully people can hear this podcast or see on the TV or see as an athlete and think that they can achieve something. But I think having that label as a disability, I don't think of it as a day-to-day thing. I think because I just go on my daily business, and I think it'd be quite nice for actually people to see that people with different disabilities, they just do everyday stuff the same as everyone else. I didn't really think about it. Like, I do remember that one moment where it clicked that I was different to everyone in my class. I was different
When was that?
It was in a playground, actually. I think I was in like year 1, year 2. And I remember playing hide and seek with my peers. And I think I was a seeker. I remember being in the corner of a playground and thinking, gosh, I'm small, aren't I? Do you know, it's so, as a kid, you think of those little things, don't you?
Yeah.
You say it like how it is really. And I thought, oh wow, I am different. I'm not as tall as my peers, my classmates, but I had that one moment of reflection, but then I was running off being the seeker. So I think I've been very lucky that, again, my sister next to me has achondroplasia and my oldest sister has learning difficulties. So we've been brought up in a family, and my cousin has autism as well. I think we've been brought up in a family that we're surrounded by different disabilities, and I think what my parents are, they're open to it, and they're open to us talking about it and being aware of it. And like when we see people in the streets, I always look and think, oh wow, they've got a disability. I always put them in like, what classification in sport could they be? Just the awareness of seeing different people. And I think because I was maybe brought up with different people around me and different disabilities, that I've just been aware of it. Yeah, I think it is the conversation, isn't it? It's talking to them. I think sometimes people are too scared these days to actually talk. But what I learned going back, and I think I would share that with a lot of people who have a disability, is that identity. I've been part of the Dwarf Sports Association from a baby, and having that similarity to someone has, I think growing up has really, really helped me, because I know that I'm not the only one in the world like with my condition, that having that identity, someone to talk to about it is a massive, massive thing. And that community feel as well. Like I remember when I was a kid learning from like the likes of the older ones about driving. I never even living with the condition, the thing about adaptions in the car, like I wouldn't have known anything about it, but seeing people with my disability having a car that's adapted, or things like periods, how to adapt with that and stuff. It's like, it's the learning and it's the talking about it, but having that identity and someone that's similar to you is really, really important. Yeah, I think so. When we say about adaptability, yes, it's a good thing, but for me, it's about being prepared. But then also the negative side to being prepared is being out of control. And I always, like me and my coach, Billy, we've got an incredible relationship, and we were always prepared for everything. We were planners. We planned everything to a T, the sessions every single day, the year, the World Championships, the Europeans, and the 4-year cycle. We had that planned from as soon as Beijing finished. We had London 2012, everything planned out. And yes, that's amazing and it's good to be planned, but also probably one of our negative traits, and probably one of my negative traits, is when things don't go to plan. I found it sometimes hard to deal with that, because I'm so rigid and so everything has to be when it's actually out of my control and things don't go to plan. Actually, having that adaptability was one of the traits that I had to learn growing up. I think it's being thrown into the deep end, isn't it? For me, I was very much plan, love to be prepared. If things didn't go my way or things didn't go as planned, it would give me a massive step back. But then I think I learned growing up is actually to be prepared for the things that you can't prepare for as well. And I think that's being thrown into the deep end, like you mentioned with Adam losing your kit. Like, it happens sometimes, doesn't it? And you can't plan for things like that, but preparing yourself and being put in those difficult situations, like in Tokyo, for that matter, the transport wasn't the best in that, and all the buses were being late. And for me, normally, that would be a massive thing. It would get to my head. What I was just saying to myself is, it's out of your control. You can't control this transport situation. But I know now that I am going to be late, but you've just got to roll with it. To be honest, got to put my hand out, I hated it.
Really?
Yeah, even when sessions wouldn't go well on a day-to-day basis, I would beat myself up. I would say, like, and maybe it's passion, maybe it's because I want to do things at the best of my ability. I'm very competitive, not just outside, but inside in my own ability too. I like to be the best that I can be every single day. And I used to say to myself, we're not robots. Like, one part of my shoulder would be like, Ellie, you're not a robot. You can't do things all the time at the best. But then the other bit would be like, oh my gosh, Ellie, you're shit. Why are you doing this? But maybe in a weird way, that little person on the other side of my shoulder saying that I'm not good was the motivator as well, because you want to prove to yourself that you can do it the next day. But then also trying to listen to that other shoulder and say, we're not robots, we're human beings as well. And yeah, I found failure quite hard, I'm not going to lie, definitely. But also I used it as motivation. If a race didn't go to my plan, I would sit down straight away the day after with my coach and would analyse everything that didn't go well. Literally, like, I'm very much a person that puts things to paper, like something, there has to be an answer to something. So if a race didn't go well, we would sit down, we would look at absolutely everything. Because I think for me, when I stand behind that start block, I like to make sure that I've done everything right. I've got no regrets. And I think in a sense that was a good thing with London 2012. And that's the build up to that. I wanted to make sure that I was doing absolutely everything. And I stood behind that starting block in London, and I could say that to myself because I'd done absolutely everything. But and I was lucky that London 2012 went well, but races that didn't go well, in a sense I learned more about myself because I learned the things that didn't go well, so then it wouldn't happen again in the future. I learned from it. It was like the little things. So for me, it was like making sure that my preparation before a race to get to the pool a bit later than I had planned, because I needed that time from warm-up to racing to be shorter than it was. As I grew older, working with a psychologist and the mental side, it was a massive thing. And what I did in that 20 minutes in the core room, where it was just me on my own before I was going to a race, I worked with like a psychologist on visualising the race. So as I got older, the mental side was a massive part. Oh, hugely. And I think it's one of the good things now is that we're talking more about the mental health, aren't we? And I think it's getting more talked about and more prominent in sport, the mental side of sport. Because I think in a weird way, you see athletes as these incredible human beings who are unstoppable, who can achieve anything. But actually, they deal with a lot, and they have a lot of mental pressures, a lot of mental stigmas, all that type of thing. And it needs to be worked on in a sense. And I've learned that actually speaking to a psychologist, to having that support system, like therapists, all that type of thing is huge. It's so important. Probably not worrying about your other competitors. When I was a kid, I used to have a list of like what I used to call my enemies, my competitors, and I used to tick box them when I beat them or when I did well.
Right, okay.
But later on in life, I very much was aware more of my competitors and those individuals, and I saw them as in threats in a weird way, and in a sense, I wanted to try and control them, and I couldn't control them, and I worried about them. Like, I would look at their like rankings, and I would look at their times all the time on meets, and I would worry about like when they were coming into the competition pool, what time they were coming in. And later on I learned that actually like I can't control what they are doing. You know, they're getting to me. They're already winning before they've even raced, because I'm worrying about what they're doing before actually focusing on myself. And I think I learned that a lot even, and I still did it in Tokyo. I was still worrying about my competitors probably more, but I've definitely learned a lot from it, because I used to be really, really worry about them all the time.
How did you bring the dial back down to, say, a healthier level for you? What ideas did you put in place?
Focus on myself, focus on the controllables, what I can control. And that's what the performance director, John Atkinson, used to always say, control the controllables. And I used to write that down, because I was like, come on now, you can only focus on yourself. Don't worry about all these other people, because it is negative energy. And I think what I worked with my psychologist was just focusing on my things, my little goals, focusing on myself, not worrying about them, not looking at like the results on the web, trying to stop at things like that. Don't actually Google their names, all that type of stuff. Just focus solely on myself. And I think, it's tough. And sometimes I think we're in a day at the age at the moment, aren't we, with social media? It's easy to look at what other people are doing, and I'm very much aware of that even more. Like you compare your lives to other people, and as an athlete, I did that. It would be a mix of both, and it would depend on what mental state I was in. If I saw that they were doing incredible times and I was in a positive mental state, I'd be like, I want to hit this training session even harder. I want to like split their times in training and make sure that, I can get their times in a weird way. But then also, if I was in a bad mental health, it would cripple me. I would be like getting really emotional, thinking, oh my God, what's the point in doing this? Like, and I think it varies. I think I've learned from a lot about myself that I'm very much like a mental roller coaster. When I'm good, I'm amazing, and the sport, I'm all right at it. Like I can do well, but when I'm at the bottom of my like mental state, the sport and everything else can go really bad. When you are in that good mood, grasp it, but also relish what is making you happy. And I think I learned a lot of things. It's like the simple things in life, and that would then lower the shit feeling. It's like trying to make sure that you enjoy the simple things, and it's that distraction, isn't it? I think that's what I learned a lot, is to distract my mind when things aren't feeling that well. Like focus on things that are going really well. Like I used to, leading into like big competitions like the Paralympics, one of my best friends, Gemma, she would always be aware that like I was going into a major games, and she always made me text her 3 things every single day that had gone well, or the little things. And I find that really helped. So when I was having that shit day, I would think of those 3 little things that were going really, like, that I loved, like simple things like my coffee in the morning. If that tasted amazing, I would write that down. The sun in the sky, because then that would outweigh the feeling of the bad days, the shit days. My race or my training session didn't go to plan, but actually outside in the real world, it's amazing weather, and that's such a nice feeling as well. Take it all in, soak it all in, enjoy it all. I think in a weird way, and I think still sometimes now, as from being that athlete now into being a retired athlete, you're always so focused on the future, and actually sometimes I wasn't in that present moment and taking it in and just soaking on that whole atmosphere. So I'd say to my young Ellie self, I would say, soak it in, grasp it all, take in all the opportunities and be present. The lead up to Rio 2016, I was in the best shape of my life. I was the fittest I've ever been, the strongest I've ever been. But actually the mental side of me was probably the lowest of lows. And I think I would go back and speak out a bit more, use that support system, use the psychologist a bit more, and to put my hand up and say, I need that extra help. Because at the time, I don't think I really put my hand up and asked for help. I was just so thinking about myself in a weird way and being a bit selfish, where actually putting my hand up and asking for help, I think, was a thing big thing that I probably should have done more. Instead of the support system of like, I know I spoke to my parents a lot in that year, but actually into that wider, like outside that support system.
Were you worried about showing weakness?
Probably, yeah, probably. I think that was probably, the biggest thing. And I think it was the realisation that this was probably the first time actually in my mental side I was probably the lowest, and I'd never actually experienced that. So I think for me it was like I was new. I didn't know, do you know when you have that mindset where you are feeling low and you've not experienced anything like that, you're unsure of what you're feeling. So actually, because it was probably all new and I'd never felt those feelings before, that actually, you just think, oh, what are these feelings? Like, you don't really want to talk out about them. Because also as well, I think, maybe it's embarrassment, because again, I was going into a Paralympics and I was in the fittest shape of my life. So actually, why should I be mentally in the wrong side of my mind? To be the best version of yourself, to do the very best, and whatever you're doing, have no regrets. But also not just no regrets, learn from the things that don't go well and put your hand up and say, that didn't go well, but what can I improve for next time? But I think, don't compare yourself to other people, and do the very best and do what makes you happy. I think happiness, growing older now as a 27-year-old and living life is, when you're happy, it radiates, doesn't it? And you're happy in yourself. So being happy is a massive thing.